Hey everybody, welcome to Day 3 of the Guilds of Ravnica set review. Day 3 means that it's time for all of the black cards. We've got a couple more days of mono-colored, and then we've got 2 days of gold-colored cards. You should know the disclaimers by now. This is a limited set review. We're not talking about constructed. Don't yell at me about constructed. You can talk about constructed, but these grades have nothing to do about it. These are my first instincts on these grades, or on these cards. This is how I'm going to approach it when I sit down for the first time on Magic Arena and play it, and then at the pre-release that weekend, and etc. Card ratings may change over time. And then finally, these are simply my opinions. We may disagree. I might be right, you might be wrong. You might be right, I might be wrong. Decent chance we're both wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Talk with me, talk with each other. Set reviews are really about discussions. If you simply take set reviews as being the answer, you're not going to grow as a player. So chat about this, talk about this. That's what they're for. But let's get on into the first card. Up first is Barrier of Bones. Barrier of Bones is a single black mana for a creature skeleton wall at common. It's an 0/3 with Defender, as all walls have, and when Barrier of Bones enters the battlefield, Surveil 1. I don't really care about this. It's not that exciting. There's better options for the Surveil deck to get Surveil going, and there's better options for stopping aggro. An 0/3 is just not going to block for that long. It'll block that 1/1 that was just mentored into a 2/2, but when it becomes a 3/3, say goodbye to your wall. And as I'll talk about several times in this set review, and I think I talked about yesterday, aggro decks go around walls. They don't just play one creature and have it hit into the wall a whole bunch. One creature will hit into the wall and the rest just walk around. So I'm really low on this. I've got it at a D-. I don't think I ever really want to play Barrier of Bones. Up next is Bartizan Bats. Bartizan's a real word. I looked it up. Bartizan Bats is 3 and a black for a creature bat at common. It's a 3/1 with flying. We've seen this creature several times. It was Carrion Feeder, it was Vampire Revenant, just with different creature types. And I think people are often too low on these. People are often kind of in the D range on this, or maybe C-, because of course it does die to basically everything. It dies to all burn, and it dies to basically all types of removal, even the weakest removal, and it dies to a bird in the air. But the investment honestly isn't that huge, and it is a 3/1 flyer, and if your opponent doesn't answer it immediately, it does represent some amount of damage. Now, while I said some people underrate this as like a C- or a D, I'm not putting this up to a C+ or anything. This certainly isn't a B. This is still just a C. This is in the cut it or don't cut it range. But I think people are very much trending towards never play these, and I think they are just okay as a 23rd card if you don't have anything better. So C for Bartizan Bats. I think they're fine. They're nothing special, but I think they're fine. Blood Operative is next. Blood Operative is 1 black for a creature Vampire Assassin at rare. It's a 3/1 with lifelink. When Blood Operative enters the battlefield, you may exile target card from a graveyard, anybody's graveyard. Whenever you surveil, if Blood Operative is in your graveyard, you may pay 3 life. If you do, return Blood Operative to your hand. This seems decent. I feel like it does all read better than it quite is, though. It's fine, it's good even, but this is dying every single time it even thinks about combat. And sometimes even when it's just minding its own business and gets pinged by something, gets pinged by a dragon that we'll see tomorrow, or other types of removal or -1/-1 spells that we'll see today even. Exiling the card from a graveyard is probably never going to be done to your own graveyard. It's probably just to attempt to hurt Undergrowth for Golgari or turn off a jumpstart spell, but that's super random if that's ever going to actually be relevant. You have no control over that, whether that's going to be relevant or not in the matchup. It's just who you're paired against. Returning it to your hand is pretty neat, and hopefully you did get 3 life out of this, out of an attack, so that you're sort of net neutral on your life gains. But all in all, I think this is one of those rares that's just fine. You should probably play it 100% of the time, but I don't think you pick it first pick. I think you pick it once all the bombs are gone, once all the removal's gone, and maybe even a couple of good commons could go over this. I think this is just like a low B- for Blood Operative. Up next is Burglar Rat. Burglar Rat is 1 and a black for a creature rat at common. It's a 1/1. When Burglar Rat enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. I really don't like this card. I don't see a reason I would ever want to play this. which is definitely weird because I've heard some people talk about this and say, yeah, it's totally fine. It's like a C or a C+. I'd always play these. I don't want to play 1/1s for 1. I don't want to play 1/1s for 2. And all it does is make my opponent discard a card, which means randomly if I'm paired up against a Golgari person, they say, haha, cool, my undergrowth gets better. Or if I'm paired up against Izzet, they say, well, I guess I don't get 2 uses out of this jumpstart spell. I just get 1 use out of this jumpstart spell. And every opponent just says frequently, sure, goodbye land. It's not a big impact, and the creature that you're left with is garbage. I have no interest in Burglar Rat. I don't ever want to play this card. I just don't care about it. I've got it at an F, actually, just because I don't think there's any deck where I even say, yeah, this is the 23rd card. This is like a 28th card for me. I'm at an F on Burglar Rat. Up next is Child of Night. Child of Night is 1 and a black for creature vampire common. She's a 2/1 with lifelink, just like she's always been in 10 printings, except she has new art, and I don't know how I feel about that. Just because it's been 10 times we've seen this card with the same art, I'm going to forget what this card is several times just by glancing at it. Anyways, we know Child of Night. We've seen her a billion times, including in the last set, so you know exactly how it is. A filler C, it's just totally fine. You'll sometimes have decks where you just have so many better cards that they don't get played. And then you'll have several decks where you need a 2-drop, and here's a 2-drop. So it's a stereotypical middle-of-the-road, cut it or don't, C. Creeping Chill is up next. Creeping Chill is 3 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. Creeping Chill deals 3 damage to each opponent, and you gain 3 life. When Creeping Chill is put into your graveyard from your library, you may exile it. If you do, Creeping Chill deals 3 damage to each opponent, and you gain 3 life. This card's awful. This card is absolutely unplayable. Sovereign's Bite is basically the same as this card, and it was half the price. You might surveil this away and you get it for free, and that's nifty, I guess. But you're just as likely to surveil, toss something, and have this end up on top of your deck. And then you're still paying 4 mana to cast this. I'm not touching this. This is a total F. One caveat is if you're in a 2-headed giant event, this does hit for 6, and is probably still crap, but F anyways for any of the limited formats that I'll be playing, and most of you will be playing. Deadweight is up next. This card's been seen a few times for sure. This is new art, though. Deadweight is a single black mana for an enchantment aura at common. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2. This kills almost half the format. There are 67 X1s and X2s, and then there's like 70-something of the rest, the X0s, which will be bigger than this, and the X3s and above. And it does that for a single mana. In a pinch, it can weaken a bigger creature, but that's kind of a desperation move. You ideally don't want to do that. You do want to 1-for-1 them preferably, but you could still do it after combat damage or after shocking it or something to kill an X4. This is just a solid card, though. I've always loved Deadweight, and historically, newer players have always undervalued this for the first week or two. Like, basically every time it's been reprinted, people have just sort of looked at it and been like, well, I don't know. And then, of course, it's totally solid. Don't do that. Just value it as a B right away, because it's a B. It's a very good card. Up next is more removal with Deadly Visit. Deadly Visit is 3 black for a sorcery at common. Destroy target creature, but that's not all. For 5 mana, we expect something to happen, and usually expect it to happen 2 times. And in this case, yes, it's Surveil 2. Totally solid. It's 5 mana sorcery speed removal. That's what we're used to these days at common, and we're fine with that, more or less. Some people more than others. Tacking on Surveil 2, that's just gravy. This will be first pick in a fair number of packs, and you'll play the first one probably just 100% of the time, maybe even the second. Deadly Visit gets a solid B. Up next is Doom Whisperer. Doom Whisperer is 3 black for a horrifying creature nightmare demon. It's a mythic. It's a 6/6 with flying and trample, and you can pay 2 life to Surveil 2. This thing's insane. A+. Moving on. Next card is we'll talk about it briefly. It murders the vanilla test. It's a 6/6 for 5 with flying, with trample. That's insane right there. Then if it wasn't just amazing for you from that, you can Surveil to your heart's content, or at least until your heart stops beating. This is a slam dunk A+. You should never ever be passing this, except maybe in pack 3 when you're decidedly not black, because of course it's going to be a little bit hard to splash black. But all other cases, you should be taking this. This card is amazing. I love it. A+ for Doom Whisperer. Up next is Dowser of Lights. Dowser of Lights is 4 and a black for a creature horror common. It's a 4/5 with a chunk of flavor text. That's it. This is real mediocre. I've got zero interest in a vanilla 4/5 for 5. It doesn't do anything. This is super cuttable, like more so than a C-. I would actually feel pretty bad if I had to play this. This set's pretty powerful. There's a lot of stuff going on. Creatures do things in this set. So a creature that literally does nothing and is overcosted is just not where you want to be. So I've got this at a D. You should do everything you can to never play this card. Up next is Gruesome Menagerie. Gruesome Menagerie is 3 black for a sorcery at rare. Choose a creature card with converted mana cost 1 in your graveyard. Then do the same for creature cards with converted mana cost 2 and 3. Return those cards straight to the battlefield. No thanks. Trying to set this up for full value, and that value being getting back a 1-drop that likely doesn't do anything on turn 5 and later, and a 2-drop that is probably pretty outclassed at this point, and a 3-drop that maybe is okay. I don't know. If you successfully got the right combination in your graveyard, sure, cool, whatever. Good luck in doing that, though. I'm not touching this. Somebody else can fiddle around with this, but I'm pretty sure it's just bad. I've got this at an F. I don't want to hope that everything works out perfectly for this to be okay. It's so much mana for a lot of low impact stuff. Up next is Hired Poisoner. Hired Poisoner used to be called Typhoid Rats. It's a single black mana for a creature human assassin at common. It's a 1/1 Death Toucher. If you've been listening to these set reviews for a while, you know that I love Typhoid Rats. I love 1 mana 1/1s with Death Touch. Surprise! It's a 1/1 for 1 that's going to get a good grade. Haha, surprise. Anyways, this card isn't insane or anything, but it just does exactly what you want to do in black. If your opponent stumbles at all, you get in for a damage or 2, and then it just sits there, and your opponent can't attack you with any creature that they in any way value, because your stupid little 1-drop kills their 10/10 or whatever they're coming in with. Again, it's not insane. I'm not going to go up to the B range at all, but this is like a super strong C+. You should 100% of the time play the first one, maybe even the second one. C++ for Hired Poisoner. Crawl Swarm is up next. It's 4 and a black for a creature insect warrior at uncommon. It's a 4/1. It's got flying, and it says 2 and a black and discard a creature card. Return Crawl Swarm from your graveyard to your hand, which is a lot worse than I thought it was, because I thought it went to the battlefield. I'm going to have to play this one for sure. Golgari is certainly going to be fine discarding creatures and getting back that 4/1 flyer that, maybe traded with something, or 8 removal, or whatnot. I had this rated a little bit higher because I thought it went to battlefield. Going back to hand means that you are paying a creature card as well as 5 mana plus 3 mana, so 8 mana total to finally get this back. But from what I've seen, Golgari can be real grindy, and this can definitely grind out value. Your opponent finally kills your 4/1 flyer, and that's probably going to be via removal or by trading a flying creature with it. And then it's just going to come back, and a 4/1 flyer is definitely going to get in for a bit of damage. So I had this originally at like a B- when I thought it went to the battlefield. Now knowing that it goes to the hand and you have to recast it, I think I'm still going to be okay with this as a C+. I think it still does just work in both black decks, both Golgari and Dimir. Dimir's going to be slow enough that something like this that just grinds out value could be good, and Golgari is going to be happy discarding those creature cards. So I think I'm still happy with this at a C+, but as I said right at the start, I'm going to have to play with it to see how it really works out. It could just be that it's way too much work and way too much mana to keep bringing it back. C+ for Crawl Swarm. Up next is Lawless Giant. Lawless Giant is 6 and a black, 7 mana for a creature zombie giant at uncommon. It's a 6/5 with Undergrowth. Shockingly, this is the first time we've talked about Undergrowth. There's actually not a ton of it in the set, but it is the Golgari mechanic, and it's not a keyword, it's not a mechanic, it's just a reminder word to say, hey, this card's going to count the number of creature cards in your library, and then that's going to matter in some way. So when Lawless Giant enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. I really don't care about this. It's 7 mana. 7 mana creatures need to end the game, and this is just a 6/5, which is below rent on the vanilla test. It's going to ping your opponent for some amount, and I need to caution you on Undergrowth. You can't just expect that you're always going to have like 7 to 10 creatures in your graveyard. I think people frequently overestimate how rapidly graveyards fill up in average games. Yes, there's Surveil. Yes, Golgari has a little bit of self-mill, so the graveyards are going to be a little bit more full than general, but the graveyards actually don't fill up that quickly. So I would not expect this to be, lava axing your opponent every time you cast it. And that's if you cast it, if you ever get to 7 mana. And it's got no evasion, it's got no trample, there's nothing else going on here. I hate this card. I think it's actively bad, and I think your deck will be much, much worse if you actually put it in your deck. So I'm going to go with a D on this. I never want to play Lawless Giant. Up next is Mausoleum Secrets. Mausoleum Secrets is 1 and a black for an instant at rare with Undergrowth. Search your library for a black card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This card's awful as well, so tutors in limited are not good. They're not good. You typically have like 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 cards that you'd actually really super happy going and finding, and they're usually pretty expensive, meaning that you would need a hugely well-stocked graveyard, and they have to be black because this card only finds you black cards. And if you're totally okay with that, you have to have not drawn that card already. If it's in your hand, what else are you going to go find? Tutors are just not good in limited. This one is super awful. I've got this at an F. You should never, ever, ever play Mausoleum Secrets. Up next is Mephitic Vapors. Mephitic Vapors is 2 and a black for a sorcery at common. All creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Surveil 2. This could be main deckable. There are 29 X1 creatures, not including all the 1/1 tokens that are running around, and you do get to surveil with this, so I think I'd be okay with that, but you do need to be ready to side it out if you find that you're just facing a whole bunch of 2/2s or 1/3s or whatever. Knowing me, and looking at this set, I feel like I'm not going to think that I have a spot for this reliably enough in the main deck. So for me, I'm probably going to keep this in the sideboard and then bring it in when I see that there's some real value that I can get. So I've got this at a D+. I wouldn't fault anybody for main decking this kind of at the C level, but I definitely prefer to react out of my sideboard rather than put sideboard cards like this in the main deck in the first place. So D+ for Mephitic Vapors. Up next is Midnight Reaper. Midnight Reaper is 2 and a black for a creature zombie knight at rare. It's a 3/2. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. So this is fine. This is solid. It's not a bomb. It's one of those sort of really good rare utility creatures that I talk about a lot. They're never really going to be A's, but they're going to be solid. And if you can get a sack outlet, which there certainly are some in this set, then you could get a good bit of value out of this. That 1 life could ultimately be a problem where you're in, an afflict situation where you die if you block and your creatures die and you take points of damage, and you die if you don't block, and that's going to be a pain, but that's relatively narrow. I think this is just a good, solid, B utility creature. It's not ending a game, but if unchecked, the value is going to be very solid. First pick it if there's no removal or bomby stuff, and pick it relatively highly after that. Solid B for Midnight Reaper. Up next is Moodmark Painter. Moodmark Painter is 2 black for a creature human shaman at common. It's a 2/3, and it's got Undergrowth. When Moodmark Painter enters the battlefield, target creature gains menace and gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. It's a 2/3 for 4, which is massively overcosted. I don't even necessarily like 2/3s for a 3, and it maybe gives another creature menace and 2, 3, maybe 4+X/+0. There's certainly going to be situations, and I'm sure people are dreaming it up right now, where my opponent has 1 creature and I give this +6, and the creature was already a 4/4, and they take 10 basically unblockable. But that's a best case scenario mentality. In a lot of cases, your opponent's going to have 2 creatures, and at worst they can chump your big creature and doesn't even get a toughness boost, so they probably still just get to kill the creature. I don't know. Ultimately, I think this is probably okay, but it does just feel overcosted, and the randomness of whether this is going to be potentially game-ending or not even relevant is a bit too much for me. I think I'm going to start out cutting this regularly if I can, which means C-. Up next is Necrotic Wound. Necrotic Wound is a single black mana for an instant at uncommon. It's got Undergrowth as well. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So I think this is super solid. It's not premium removal because, again, you just don't know how big this is going to be. You don't know if this is going to be unconditional kill every 10 drop in the game, or if this is going to potentially be -1/-1, or even -0/-0. This is, of course, quite dead in the early game. But you're going to have Surveil. Well, there's not that much Undergrowth in the set. There's a lot of Surveil in the set, and even if you're Golgari here, you're going to get a fair bit of Surveil, and of course if you're Dimir, then you've got a ton of Surveil. So while I did warn people to say don't think that you're going to have too many creatures in the graveyard, I think we can reasonably assume this is at least going to be -2/-2 by the time you want to play it, which means it's the same as Deadweight. It slightly loses the ability of, permanently weakening a creature for later removal or whatnot, but it gains the versatility of being instant speed. So I think Necrotic Wound is fine. I think it's right on level with Deadweight, and sometimes it'll be even better. So I'm going with a B on Necrotic Wound. I think it's totally fine. Up next is Never Happened. Up next is let's go back to Never Happened. Never Happened is 2 and a black for a sorcery at common. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from that player's graveyard or hand and exile it. It's the old Nazis, Duress, etc. that everybody knows is relatively decent and main deckable frequently in Constructed, and certainly great sideboard options, but that does not translate over to Limited. There's just so much less super awesome cards that you're willing to hit with this. If you hit a Moodmark Painter with this, that's the best card that you can get rid of. Whoop-de-doo, right? You wasted a card on this. So I don't typically like to play these effects main deck. If you see something that you cannot deal with, you've got a terrifying Planeswalker that murdered you in the first game, then these can reasonably come in out of the sideboard if you just have no other way of dealing with it. But there are still better ways of dealing with it than this. The slight twist here that you can also exile a card from the graveyard instead if you don't want to exile something from the hand is not really relevant. I don't super care about that. Sure, sometimes you might hit their Jumpstart card or hurt their Undergrowth engines a slight bit, but it's still just not really worth it. I've got Never Happened at a D-. I don't want to play this, and I don't really want to play it out of the board if I can help it, so D- for Never Happened. Up next is Pilfering Imp. Pilfering Imp is a single black mana for a creature imp at uncommon. It's a 1/1 flyer, but you can also pay 1 and a black and tap it and sack it. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an online card from it. That player discards that card. So it's Thoughtseize. It's Never Happened without the graveyard part. But you can only activate this ability anytime you could cast a sorcery. And it taps, which means you can't do this after it attacks, which is a huge downside for this card. So I'm gonna tempt fate again, and I'm gonna give a 1/1 flyer for 1 another low grade. I just really don't like this card. I don't like 1/1s for 1, even if they have flying. Everybody knows that very well now. And the upside here of getting a Thoughtseize sometime later in the game just isn't that exciting for me. As I said with Never Happened, I don't like to play these effects. Out of the sideboard, I'm slightly okay with them, but I still don't really care. So I'm not sold on Pilfering Imp. I think it's obviously better than those effects because you do get the creature until you decide to use the Thoughtseize effect, but I've got this at like a D+. I still don't really want to play this card. Might turn out that it's amazing. We'll see. I doubt it. D+ for Pilfering Imp. Up next is Plague Crafter. Plague Crafter is 2 and a black for a creature human shaman at uncommon. It's a 3/2. When Plague Crafter enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. So this is actually super cool. It's like Fleshbag Marauder, which was basically this card, except both players sacked a creature. There was no planeswalker and there was no discard option. So there's a slight extra value here where you can play this, and if your opponent has an empty board, they still have to go down a card at least. but that's not exactly the hugest improvement here. And remember, you'll never discard a card because you'll always be able to at least sacrifice Plaguecrafter here. Ultimately, you never really want to play this to make your opponent discard a card, but to pick off one of their creatures on board is pretty good. Edict effects, though, are always less good than you want them to be because remember, your opponent is choosing them, and there are tokens in this set. There is Selesnya, there are Go Wide decks where you'll play this and your opponent will just go, yeah, cool. So throw away this 1/1 that I forgot I even had. So be careful with that. Ultimately, I think this is just like, I think it's still a B-. I think it's still totally fine. You just have to play smart with this. This is obviously way less good if your opponent has 3, 4, 5 creatures on board. It's not going to really do much. But if you can catch them with that one creature on board, or maybe like bounce their other creature, leaving one creature on board and play this, it's going to kill them. And it's a way around hexproof, which is great. So B- for Plaguecrafter. Up next is Price of Fame. Price of Fame is 3 and a black for an instant at uncommon. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature. We haven't seen any yet, but there are some in the set. What does it do? Well, destroy target creature. And, because apparently there needs to be more, Surveil 2. This card's amazing. This card is just absolutely amazing. It's instant speed. It's unconditional. It's only 4 mana, which obviously is more than we used to pay years and years and years ago, but it's less than the 5 mana sorcery speed ones. And it's splashable with only 1 black mana pip in a multicolor set. Beyond that, you get to Surveil for 2, and there's more. If you're facing a scary legendary, this is only 2 mana. This is nuts. This is a slam dunk first pick. There are so few cards that you would ever pick over this card. This is amazing. It goes in any deck that is black. It goes in several decks that aren't black if you happen to have a couple of guild gates to splash with this. This card's great. I would even just throw in 3 basic swamps to splash for this. Is seeing it in pack 3 when I'm green-white. Never pass this card. It's amazing. I've got it just an A+. Which is very high for removal, but this is some of the best removal we've seen in a long time. A+ for Price of Fame. Up next is Ritual of Soot. Ritual of Soot is 2 black for a sorcery at rare. Destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. So this is the standard weakened niche Black Wrath that we usually get 1 per set or 1 every other set or so. I don't tend to like them just because they're a little bit janky to play properly in Limited. You have to not play creatures and bait your opponent into playing creatures, but then if your opponent happens to go above the magic number, which is usually 3 toughness, then this doesn't even kill those creatures and you spend a bunch of time not playing creatures. Anyways, for my personal play, this is like a C+ or so, but I just don't pick them highly enough, so I never play with them, because everybody else picks them way more highly than I do. They also get way worse if you play them in game 1 because they are super easy to play around. So I'm not a huge fan of Ritual Soot, by which I mean it's a C+, as opposed to like the B that some people will give it. But as I said, I don't pick these early enough, and so I literally just never get a chance to play with these. So I'm going to go C+. I'm sure some of you are going to go higher. That's fine. Different play styles there. But yeah, C+ for me for Ritual of Soot. Up next is Severed Strands. Severed Strands is 1 and a black for a sorcery at common. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, please. You gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. And what does it do? Well, it destroys target creature an opponent controls. This is Bone Splinters, except it costs 100% more, which is just 1 more. And that's totally fine by me. For that extra mana, you get to gain some life, which is cool, I guess, but ideally, you're sacking a 1/1, so you're only gaining 1 life, so it's about as meaningless as it could possibly be. But it's totally splashable if you really need removal in your Selesnya or Boros deck or whatever, and it would work there. It's not ideal. You'd prefer to splash Price of Fame, but if you don't open a Price of Fame, I doubt you are ever going to see one. All in all, I think this is totally okay-ish removal. Sacking a creature doesn't suck quite as much as people think, but it does still suck, especially because there's not that much token production in the black decks. So it's not first pickable, but I think it's a pretty high mid-pack pick for me, and I'd probably almost always play the first one unless I'm super creature light. The second one, that's a bit of a harder sell for me. So I've got a B- for Severed Strands. Up next is Spinal Centipede. Spinal Centipede is terrifying. It's 2 and a black for a creature insect at common. It's a 3/2. When Spinal Centipede dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Totally just fine. We saw this in Kaladesh as something, a market broker or something like that. It was this exact same card. It's a 3/2 for 3, which is usually like a C+ or so. You generally don't want to play them, but if you gotta, you can. Getting a counter when it dies, though, just makes this a totally fine C. You still cut it if you just have better cards, which you may just have better cards, and there are going to be times where you don't, and you're totally fine to play this. So, middle of the road C for Spinal Centipede. Up next is Undercity Necrolisk. Undercity Necrolisk is 3 and a black for a creature zombie lizard. It's an uncommon 3/3, and it says pay 1 generic mana and sacrifice another creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on Undercity Necrolisk. It gains menace until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. Womp womp. That's a downside for sure, but I still like this card. It's a sack outlet, which is awesome. It gets rid of those luminous bonded creatures and those capture sphered creatures. It fuels your undergrowth. It puts a counter on itself, so it stays there. It gets menace, so it hopefully can attack, or at least has a better attack. These are all things that I'm totally fine with. And this is a 3/3 for 4, which at the fail state of you never sacrificing a creature is okay. It's like a C-, but it's okay. I really, really like this card. I'm going to value it pretty highly. The sorcery speed thing is a huge bummer for sure. There's no combat shenanigans. There's no threat of activation going on. But still, I like this a lot. There's a reason to get creatures into your graveyard in this color. There are a fair number of enchantment removals, which means you're going to get value out of those creatures still. I'm going to start possibly too high on this at a B, but I really like it. So let's go with a B for Undercity Necrolisk. Up next is Veiled Shade. Veiled Shade is 2 and a black for a creature Shade at common. It's a 2/2. You can pay 1 and a black, and Veiled Shade gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Shades used to be a lot better way back in the beginning of Magic's history because it was usually 1 mana to pump it. Sometimes it was 1 generic mana to pump it, and they usually weren't overcosted on the vanilla test by too much. They were also, surprise, surprise, pretty damn hard to deal with. So the pump ability has doubled in price. It costs 2 mana to give +1/+1. It's a 2/2 for 3, so it misses the vanilla test, but it's still probably just totally okay. Late in the game, you can probably pump this to a 4/4, maybe even a 5/5. Getting higher than that, that's probably asking a bit too much. At that point, we're looking at 8 mana, and 4 of it explicitly must be black. That's pretty tricky. But there's no evasion on this. It's not flying. It doesn't get trample. It doesn't have menace or anything like that. So it's still just going to be chump blocked forever. So I think we're just going to go with a C on this. Cut it if you have to, and don't if you don't. It's nothing more exciting than that, or less exciting than that. So C for Veiled Shade. Up next is our second last card, Vicious Rumors. Vicious Rumors is a single black mana for a sorcery at common. It does 4 different things, and they're all mediocre. Vicious Rumors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Woo! Each opponent discards a card. Woo! Each opponent then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. Woo! And then you gain a life. Woo! This is awful. This is so bad. This is one of the worst cards that I've seen in a long time. 1 damage doesn't matter. Each opponent discarding a card doesn't matter. Putting the top card of their library into their graveyard doesn't matter. And if you're against Golgari, or is it, you may be actively helping your opponent. And then gaining 1 life doesn't matter. Literally nothing about this card matters. It's less than an F. It's a G. It is unplayable. This card is garbage. Don't touch it. G for garbage. And our final card for the black set review is Whispering Snitch. Whispering Snitch is 1 and a black for a creature, vampire rogue at uncommon. It's a 1/3. Whenever you surveil for the first time each turn, Whispering Snitch deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So obviously this is meant for the Surveil Matters deck, which we saw a few payoffs for in the blue set review, and we'll see a few more in the Dimir part of the gold set review. And it will be a deck, I believe. I don't know how much this pays you off, though, because you have to start making sure that you're only surveilling once a turn to get maximum value out of this, in which case you're slowing down your surveil engine. And the creature side is okay, a 1/3 for 2. We've actually seen the last several sets it be okay. But I don't know. I think there's better Surveil Matters payoffs. I think one of these guys would probably be fine. I don't really want to load up on them, though. I'm going to start at like a C-. If you are not in the Surveil Matters deck, if you only have a few, I don't think you touch this card. I think it's absolutely not something you ever want to play in that case. But in the Surveil Matters deck, I think one of them's okay, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to go with a C- on Whispering Snitch. I just wish it triggered for every Surveil, not for the first time each turn. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for the black set review. We've gotten through 3. We've got the red, the green, and then the first 3 guilds of gold, and then the last 2 guilds plus artifacts and lands coming up over the rest of the next part of a week or so. So black looks pretty fun. It's probably my 3rd color that I'm most excited for because, of course, it has all that Surveil, and it's part of Dimir, and Dimir looks really fun. There's definitely some amazing cards in there with Price of Fame and Doom Whisperer, and there's definitely some awful cards in there with Vicious Rumors and etc. So let me know what you think of black. Are you excited for it? Are you happy to go to Mir? Are you happy to go to Golgari? What do you agree with, disagree with? Chat with me, chat with each other down in the comments below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at the Mana Leek. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. And you definitely want to check there. That's where I announce stream times. I'll be announcing the Wizards sponsored stream that's going to be happening this coming Wednesday, where they've given me a full account, and I'm going to play with a whole bunch of streamers for most of the day, doing sealed and draft and maybe constructed and who knows what else. So definitely check me out on Twitter. That's where a lot of my announcements go. You can also find me over at facebook.com/themanaleak, twitch.tv/themanaleak, and patreon.com/themanaleak. If you want to go over to inkedgaming.com and pick up a playmat or some accessories like sleeves or hoodies or whatever, you can definitely go over there and use the coupon code MANALEAK10, all one word, 10 for the 10, and you'll get 10% off your order and help out the channel. If you like the content, though, click that thumbs up button, click subscribe if you want to see more. Definitely share this around if you want. That's one of the best ways for this channel to grow. If you can't help out or don't want to help out with Patreon, etc., sharing, possibly even better than that. So share these around for sure. But if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you all tomorrow for the red set review, which means more spells matters stuff.